All right, I'd love to introduce our next speakers for today. We have Dr. Sara Del Valle, a Deputy Group Leader at Los Alamos National Laboratory. All right, Dr. Sara Del Valle is a scientist and a Deputy Group Leader for the Information Systems of Modeling Group A1 at Los Alamos National Laboratory. As a scientist, she leads a multidisciplinary team focused on detecting, understanding, and forecasting infectious diseases using heterogeneous data streams and mathematical, computational, and statistical models. Most recently, her team has been investigating the role of large-scale data analytics, such as satellite imagery, internet data, and climate on complementing traditional approaches to inform infectious disease modeling and political instability. Her work has led to new insights on how human behavior affects disease transmission, better understanding on the role of mixing patterns on disease spread, the role of social media to inform nowcasting and forecasting models, and pioneered modeling approaches to forecast infectious diseases in real time. Her work has been covered in several top media outlets such as National Geographic, NPR Science Friday, Popular Mechanics, and the New York Times. She will be joined in conversation again by Virginia, a talent acquisition specialist. I will pass the mic to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share today.
Thank you so much, Mariela. Hi, my name is Virginia Buchanan Hillman. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. And hola para todas las mujeres que están celebrando su latinidad hoy. I am joined by Dr. Sara Del Valle. You all heard her amazing introduction, the great things that she is doing. I'm honored to talk to her today. Sarah, welcome.
Hi, Virginia. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and chat with you.
Awesome. Well, hey, as Dr. Del Valle, Sarah, let's start by tell us a little bit more about yourself beyond that amazing introduction. Tell me, where are you based? And give us an insight into your career journey.
Sure. So I'm located in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And for those of you who are not familiar with New Mexico and specifically Los Alamos, I'm in the northern part of New Mexico. I'm, very close to the border with Colorado. We're about 7,500 feet above sea level, and I'm surrounded by mountains and wildlife. I see deer and mountain lions and foxes and bears on a almost weekly basis. And so that's where I am. And in terms of my journey, so I'm originally from Mexico, and I moved to the US when I was 16. My parents moved to New Jersey, and I always loved math. I'm a mathematician, but I didn't really know I would become a scientist. I just like math, and I thought that maybe I would become a math professor because that's what I thought mathematicians did. But when I was in college and I was majoring in math, I took a summer internship at Cornell University in New York. And during that internship, I was introduced to the concept of mathematical epidemiology, and it's basically using math to understand epidemics and infectious diseases, which was like, it just blew my mind away because I never really made the connection between epidemics and math. I always thought, epidemics were studied by medical doctors and public health people and epidemiologists. And so that really kind of shifted my journey, and I became hooked with the fact that I could use math and have a more direct impact. And so I decided to pursue a PhD in mathematical epidemiology. And so I went to the University of Iowa and I got a PhD. And I had the opportunity to work with Herbert Heathcote, who was my advisor. And he worked, back in the day with the CDC on developing models that came up with the schedules that are currently used for kids. You know how kids get vaccinated at 3 months or 6 months, a year, and you have all these different schedules. it was so exciting for me to know that mathematicians had worked on developing those types of models. And so while I was at the University of Iowa, I got the opportunity to come here to Los Alamos. I was still working on my PhD. I was a student. I came here for also an internship, and I never left. I became really interested in the type of research that they were doing here, and also the environment. And previously, you know, I lived in New Jersey, which was very different, and then I lived in Iowa, and then I moved to New Mexico, and I found basically my true love, I guess, in terms of like community and the kind of research and work that I wanted to do. And so that's kind of my journey in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I really like that you pursued what you love, and you're in an environment that makes you happy. Environment is everything, right? It's so conducive to true happiness. And congratulations on seizing your day. We would love to know the motivation behind becoming a scientist. You touched on it a little bit, but, you know, to the audience, it would be so helpful to know like the nitty-gritty.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that motivated me to become a scientist. One is that you get to use the tools that you learn in school to and apply them to real life problems. And I felt when I was in college, you know, you work with a lot of like abstract things, like you're like learning algebra, geometry, and other things, and you're like, how in the world anyone will ever use these concepts for real life applications, like, you know, and so I really love the fact that I use, you know, differential equations to study epidemics. I use a lot of calculus, and I'll use, you know, linear algebra and many other things that I learned. So I like the combination of using math and computer science and many other sciences, because we have very multidisciplinary teams here. And we work on many different problems. So we've worked on like the Ebola outbreak. Now we're working with COVID. In 2009, we worked with H1N1, the influenza pandemic too. You know, we're working on trying to understand dengue in Brazil, and I get to travel and work with people that are actually on the ground, you know, trying to fight the spread of dengue and many other infectious diseases. So I really like, that I think motivated me, the potential impact, and that I can see the impact on reducing the spread of infectious diseases. And I also love working with people that have different ideas and diverse kind of views. And I think that was something that when you work in a research institution like Los Alamos and other national labs and other research institutions, you get to work with many different people and learn from different people. And so I feel like it's a learning type of position, and then also you get to have an impact in the real world.
That's awesome. And what a timely job. It's so essential right now. And we thank you for the research you're doing to perhaps, you know, create a great effect of saving lives. You touched base a little bit on those interests and those exciting things that you do, but tell us a little bit more about those research interests and proclivities that you are having.
Sure. So I'm interested, obviously, in infectious diseases. That's, you know, what drives me. But within the area of infectious diseases, I'm really interested in exploiting different data streams, and that was touched on my bio. And so we're trying to use non-traditional data such as social media. One of the key ingredients, I guess, in how diseases spread is behavior. And we've seen it during the COVID-19, you know, whether people wear a face mask or they don't, whether people are staying home or moving around their communities, or getting vaccinated or not. So behavior is super important, but we don't have like a database that collects information about behavior. And so we are trying to use social media to understand, you know, are people talking about face mask usage? Do they have positive sentiments toward face masks or negative sentiments? And so I'm really interested in using kind of like different approaches like that are, we call it non-traditional just because like social media is a newer kind of data stream. I'm also interested in the combination, the fusion also of the climate has, it's a very important piece. And now with climate change, we think that many other infectious diseases that will continue to spread, especially mosquito-borne diseases. And so we're trying to connect climate models with a mathematical model so that we can see how climate is going to play a role in the spread of mosquito-borne diseases around the Americas and also across the world. And so I think those are some of the major things that I'm kind of interested in pursuing right now.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad that you brought that important topic and things to think about, right? Like the climate change affecting infectious diseases. It sure will. And so thankful that you're conducting this important research. Let's talk about Los Alamos in the National Laboratory that you work at. It stands out among all the national laboratories that we have in the US for its high percentage of Hispanic employees. And it's an amazing little factoid, right? But tell me a little more about that. Tell me about what does the LANL do differently to ensure such an inclusive feat? That's definitely no easy task.
Yeah, so we have, and I can't remember the exact statistics, but I think about 50% of the employees, and we're about 13 or 14,000 employees here. But I believe that 50% are of Hispanic descent, and so I think the reason why Los Alamos has been so successful in attracting and retaining Hispanic and Latino people is because, well, one is the geography. So we live in New Mexico, and specifically in northern New Mexico, and so we have access to a large Hispanic community who have been living here for many generations. And so you know there's a lot of there's both people from Mexican descent and also Spaniards that settled in New Mexico, 100 years ago. And so we are able to draw from many of those communities. But once you start, I think once they started building a community, it's all about word of mouth. If you are happy with your job, you tell your friends to join you, and then those friends tell their friends, and so it's kind of like a domino effect. And so we have great benefits. We also have a lot of flexibility, and that has helped a lot during the COVID pandemic because being able to work from home, it's such an important thing right now, especially if you have a family. And so there's a lot of flexibility here. And I think one of the things that the lab has done really well is prioritizing employee well-being. And so there's a lot of access to wellness types of things. And so we can they want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves in order to also do the work that we're doing.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to know that. And that's just incredible to know that there's so much Latinidad happening in science. Let's talk a little bit more about HOLA, the Hispanic Employee Resource Group that you are involved with. I would love to hear more about it. If you can tell me how it ensures growth opportunities to Hispanic employees, amongst other little factoids that can help the audience today.
Sure. So HOLA, as you mentioned, was created to kind of bring the Hispanic community. We were already here, but then everyone is doing their own thing and not really connecting. And so so there were several people who decided to put this organization together. And it's great because they do a lot of different activities, not just during the Hispanic month, but throughout the year, so that it can serve the Hispanic community, but it also bring awareness to other employees that are non-Hispanic. And so for some of the activities that I participated in, as part of this organization, for example, they bring mariachis to our our cafeteria sometimes. And so then, you know, the mariachis are just playing and people are coming for lunch. Obviously, this was before the pandemic because right now with the pandemic, things have changed. But that was great because like everyone gets, you know, you're having lunch and at the same time you're listening to music, and at the same time you're becoming aware of these types of the type of like activities that the Hispanic community are doing. They also bring different speakers throughout the year that talk about their career journeys. Our Senator Ben Lujan is also, you know, Hispanic. Now I'm just forgetting the name. The governor, she's also Hispanic, and so we are able to bring a lot of these, you know, very renowned and well-known people in to the lab, and then they can talk to not just to the Hispanic community, but to everyone about you know, Hispanic heritage. Another thing that they've also started doing was they were giving Spanish lessons. And so since there's a lot of, you know, Hispanic population here in New Mexico, many people want to just learn or just know a little bit about how to speak Spanish. And so the OLA community, the OLA organization was actually helping people learn Spanish, and just like, you know, just basic things, obviously not, you know, being fluent or anything, but these are like smaller things that they're doing throughout the year to help the Spanish community continue to stay organized and learn about each other, but also bringing other people into the picture so that they can also learn about the community.
That's amazing. They do say that when you love what you do and you do what you love, that is the best branding a company can have. And it's also fulfilled employees, right? Fulfill a company in an organization, in your opinion, in many, many more ways than just doing the job. So I'm so glad to know that Ola is causing that effect and that impact. How amazing. I have a little leeway here. Lisa in the audience, hi Lisa, asks, hi, I work with college students who major in math, but not necessarily looking at PhDs. What recommendations do you have to get them in going to a lab?
So, okay, so there's a lot. One is that here at the lab, we do take, you know, college students. You don't have to have a PhD. We also take master students, and obviously we take PhD students. So just because you don't have a PhD, you know, it doesn't mean that you can't join a national lab. One of the main recommendations that I would give to college students is to do an internship. So we call this like the dating period, you know what I mean? You don't want to just hire someone without knowing their work ethic, or if you are able to connect with them. And so by doing an internship, we have a lot of summer internships. And so I would highly suggest people going to our website and looking for summer internships. Prior to COVID, we used to hire about 2,000 students during the summer. And so we kind of turned into like a college town here. And from all over the States, in many different, with many different fields, you know, we have physics, we have people doing epidemiology, we have people working on biology, on materials and, you know, climate and many, many different areas. So there's a little bit for everyone. So I would recommend looking into an internship. And once you do an internship, I think that kind of opens your horizon. I also never thought about going and getting a PhD until I had an internship, because I didn't even know, you know, how it would help me, why I would want to do it. And during the internship, I learned that that if you want to learn more, if you want to do research, that having a PhD would give you the tools and to actually be better at doing research. And so I would recommend them doing that. And the other thing that I tell people is that, you know, these internships are paid. So you don't have to, it's not a volunteer, you know, internship. There's a lot of that happening in other areas, but here, you know, they're all paid. They're very well paid. So there's also internships. In the internship that I did at Cornell University was also a paid internship, and they provided room and board and everything and a stipend. And so I didn't really have to really invest anything in doing. In fact, it was an investment on me because I got to learn and create connections, and then, you know, kind of find my path and my journey. And so I think I answer the question, and I don't know if there was anything else that I missed.
Lisa, I hope we were able to answer the question properly. We're approaching the last 8 minutes, and we're going to definitely have 2 more questions that I have for you. Then there is a great question coming from the audience as well. But that was great advice. That's so amazing. Thank you so much. And then the paid internship, it's so great to know that there's paid internships for people that are in STEM. It encourages Latinos and encourages other people of color, and especially women, to be able to take advantage of these things. Diving a little bit deeper in all that you have said, what is the state of diversity, equity, and inclusion amongst the scientific fraternity?
Well, we've made some progress, but we still have a lot of work to do. You know, there's still that as you go up the ladder, you know, towards the PhD, the number of Hispanic people with PhD, with masters, and even college degrees is not as good as it could be. And so I think we need to do more. Maybe we need to start early. We need to start maybe reaching out to students when they're still in school, not in college, but just in elementary school, in junior high school, and in high school. And also we need to maybe increase the role model so that kids can actually see themselves in those positions. And one thing that I wanted to add to my answer before about the PhD, that also I applied for a PhD fellowship. And so basically there's also funding so that you can go and do a PhD without having to pay for it. So there, especially for Hispanics and women, there's a lot of funding and fellowships and internships in they call them fellowships. And so that you can go to school and you get a stipend, and they pay for your education. So that's another bonus, and so people don't have to worry about paying for those kinds of things.
That's amazing to know. Definitely, we're going to ask maybe to put a little link at the end of the conversation for that, because that's such a great tidbit. Tell us a little bit more about your work in developing mathematical and computational models for mitigating the spread of infectious diseases. We really would like to know, how does your research translate in terms of the spread of the COVID virus, such a timely and important topic right now, and also, you know, reports showing a higher incidence of COVID cases amongst underrepresented communities, like Black communities or Hispanic communities. Is there a correlation of racial identity and spread according to your models?
So sometimes people, so the way I usually talk about my research is video games. So, you know, many people are familiar with video games, and we basically have video games that we use to simulate the spread of pandemics. And so it's a computer simulation. We have schools, we have workplaces, we have, you know, the mall, and we have airports and everything. And so we have people in our simulation moving around. We can assess the impact of what happens if I close the school in this community, and then we see how the disease spreads. We can also see what happens if people wear face masks, if people get vaccinated or they don't, and the implications of those decisions on the overall spread. And so we've been using these types of computer simulations to inform, you know, closures or different mitigation strategies, or how do you target a certain community that appears to have higher incidence. And in terms of your questions about correlation between, you know, racial identity and spread of COVID, our models take into consideration like things like household size, and, you know, based on census data, some Hispanic communities tend to have higher household size, and that increases their exposure. Because if you're living like a household of, you know, 6 people, for example, compared to a household of 2, then that increases the risk and exposure. And so also access to healthcare or occupation. So in our simulations, everyone has an occupation based on, you know, census data and some other data sources. And so there are certain occupations that are less likely to allow for remote work, for example, during the pandemic. And so that increases the spread within those communities. So we have definitely seen a correlation between, communities that have higher household size and specific occupations that lead to higher numbers. And so I think that I don't know if that answered your question.
It definitely did. There's definitely important thing to be said about the correlations that you mentioned. So thank you for that important information. We have a last question from the audience right now. It's, do you see any dangers in referring to our current state as a post-pandemic world? Most countries in the global south are still trying to overcome the pandemic, so it doesn't feel post at all. Can you share your thoughts, please?
Sure. Yeah, I think we're still very much in the pandemic. There's no, infectious diseases don't know borders or language or any. We are highly connected, and as long as there's COVID spreading in other communities, that will put us at risk. And especially as you've seen, there's been variants that are emerging. And so there's still a lot of opportunity for the virus to continue to mutate and create different variants. And, our children are still not vaccinated. We still have, children under 12 haven't been vaccinated. So there's still a large population within our community, even though the vaccine has been approved for 12 plus. So I think we're very much still in the middle of the pandemic, unfortunately, and we need to continue doing everything that we can and hopefully increasing access to vaccines around the globe and doing everything that we can as individuals to also mitigate the spread, because people don't realize how powerful we are when it comes to infectious diseases. Your decisions actually have an aggregate effect. And so if we can all kind of do the right thing and mitigate the spread, we can all be better.
Thank you. That's a very important thing to learn, right? It all starts with us. Any moves, any actions we take in life, professionally, personally, affect our community. So thanks for that tidbit. Lastly, for everyone tuned in, how can we connect with you and support you in your endeavors?
Well, I'm on Twitter and also on LinkedIn. And one of the things that we're trying to do in my team is we're in the process of starting a global disease forecasting center in the same spirit as weather forecasting. We've been forecasting COVID, and we feel that we should be able to forecast all infectious diseases around the globe so that people can know what's spreading in their community, whether it's dengue or malaria or flu or tuberculosis or some other infectious disease. And so hopefully that will be out soon. And so hopefully people can check it out when that happens.
I certainly cannot wait to see it. Thank you so much, Sarah, Dr. Del Valle, and thank you, everyone. Please drop any links at Dr. Del Valle that you might, for people to get to know you more. I'm going to post mine too, and I'm passing it over to Mariela.
Thank you. Bye.